All right, let's talk about David Icke. What do you think his take is on the Mandela Effect? I've heard David Icke speak before. He's very articulate, truther, researcher, exposing the system and the control system that we live in. His most recent book is called The Trap. I've never read a book by David Icke, but this title intrigued me because my views of reality have been very much like a trap. And it says The Trap, what it is, how it works, and how we escape its illusion. So I just had to read it. I was also very curious if David Icke, who does see the world as a simulation, or at least a good analogy to a computer simulation or a hologram, I was wondering if he would incorporate the Mandela Effect, because the Mandela Effect lends itself to this theory very well. But I find it interesting that David does not address it, mention it. He certainly knows about it. He's, spends his whole life researching every rabbit hole. He's certainly aware of it, but he's not given an opinion. Like so many truthers and researchers who are well known, they just are not given an opinion on the Mandela Effect. But David does say some very interesting things. First of all, about the power grid and the way this physical reality works. He mentions BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, and State Street, where the real economic power resides. If you want to take over, achieved, and weaken being achieved, America on behalf of cult-controlled China, then here's your vehicle. A few people can't control the world? ? For God's sakes, they already do. He quotes a book called Biocentrism, basically pointing out how fake our physical reality is. And that quote is, "It is easy to recall from everyday experience that neither electricity nor magnetism have visual properties. So on its own, it's not hard to grasp that there is nothing inherently visible, nothing bright or colored about the candle flame. Now let these same invisible electromagnetic waves strike a human retina, and if, and only if, the waves happen to measure between a certain thing, that's the only way you see it." So he's pointing out that reality is interpreted by our brain. He talks about how we are constantly being stimulated to be engaged in this reality. He says one key way this is done is constantly stimulating our central nervous system and its networks through electrical and electromagnetic interaction with technical or technological radiation and Wi-Fi. Fear and stress can also do this by pressing the on button of the fight or flight response with no off time to chill or relax, constantly stimulating. He's presenting in his book this idea that we are constantly being harvested for a negative energy, and this is one of the ways that it's done. He says one level of the simulation and the idea is to trap minds in further illusion after body death to keep them on the Ferris wheel of reincarnation cycle. Not every human has consciousness in the sense that we perceive it. Many are software inserts into the simulation, like those known in computer games as non-playable characters. So he is subscribing to the idea that we do live in a world where there are NPCs, people who don't really have a greater soul. They're just filler background people. I know this idea has come out a lot amongst the Mandela affected as well. He says there's a goal here, a goal of the system to turn once conscious people into non-playable characters. It is the ultimate control. Remember, too, that this technology does not have to be invented. It already exists, and it is only a matter of transferring that into the human realm from the fourth dimensional reality, which means that Terrell's time scale can be greatly reduced. All of this technology that we see now is just something that's translated from another place where it already exists. He's just saying there's nothing new here. In fact, he would say that this world that we live in is a copy of a greater reality or a prime reality. In fact, this may just be a sliver of a copy of that greater reality. And once it has been copied, these beings, these malevolent beings who control this system, are able to make edits to it and changes to it as they, can bring about the changes. Now, there's a belief there that they do not have the power to create. That truly conscious spirits that are trapped in the system, that the power of creation comes from them. So their goal or tactic is to manipulate those who are real conscious beings into buying into a narrative that they create, believing in that narrative, and that will bring about, through some sort of black magic, a physical manifestation of the reality they are trying to create. David says he was in New York. A Muslim taxi driver asked him what he was working on, and at the time, he says, he was researching Gnostic texts about archons. When I told him how archons were described, he said, "That sounds just like the jinn." Gnostics say archons are made from this luminous fire. And he goes on to talk about Gnosticism. So in many beliefs or many things that David says, it does sound like Gnosticism. I really didn't know a whole lot about Gnosticism, but from reading this book, have a better idea about it and have looked up some things on my own. The taxi driver said the jinn are described in terms of smokeless fire. He says, I've become known for highlighting the reptilians when, in fact, there are many different types of non-human located in the fourth dimension and able to enter the simulation. There are many descriptions and accounts of other non-humans, including reptilians, living within 3D Earth. He says that he's been writing since the 90s about a plan exposed by Canadian investigative journalist Sergei Monest called Project Bluebeam to stage a fake alien invasion to justify the fusing of global power and militaries to meet the threat. The idea is to use holographic projections to stage the illusion, and no doubt human UFO craft too. He says there's an article that describes how experiments open portals to other dimensions where reptilian humanoids reside. In the project entitled The Gateway Process, it is highly likely to still be continuing with more sophisticated technology today. Of course, a lot of people believe that CERN, in its ultimate goal, is to open up portals and such with the other side. He says at one part, the day-to-day rituals and superstitious acts, slavish conformance to old ways of doing things, deference to precedent, cold-bloodedness, no empathy, a desire for control, power, ownership, territoriality, and a belief that might is right, winner takes all. See how many of those traits apply to members of the British royal family. He says Satanism, another expression of Yalda Bayoth, is all about inversion, right down to its inverted symbolism, including the inverted pentagram and inverted cross. And then he quotes Michael Elner saying, just look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Psychiatrists destroy minds. Scientists destroy truth. Major media destroys information. Religions destroy spirituality, and governments destroy freedom. He talked about something I found interesting. He was writing a book and researching high HD dreams, or high definition dreams, and he returned for a few days. When he woke from them, guess what I saw? Something else that I've experienced when waking from dreams is a knock at the door. I hear the sound in the second I awake, it's like a rat-tat-tat, as if the knuckles are knocking the front door of my flat. So I thought that was interesting because I've experienced that so many times in my life. I've that and the whole ghost thing, and he talks about seeing these things, these ghost-like apparitions run across his room right when he wakes up. I just had to make mention that I've experienced that too. In fact, it has been even when I've been fully awake and not even asleep, like just sitting there in my living room, and that knock occurs, and you go check who's there, and there's nobody there. It mentions a prediction by Ray Kurzweil. It says in 2029 is the consistent date I have predicted for when the AI will pass a valid Turing test and therefore achieve human levels of intelligence. I have set the date 2045 for the singularity, which is when we will multiply our effective intelligence a billionfold by merging with the intelligence we have created. Now, he says something that many Christians have said this is the goal of the Antichrist and beast system. Many have spoken about this, saying this is an agenda of the beast in the end times. But he says, so he references a website called statista.com, STATISTA.com. The number of devices and technologies connected to the internet is passing 12 billion, with more than 25 billion projected by 2030, which is a key year for the cult in its transformation timeline. I said that the next stage after the Internet of Things was planned to be the Internet of Everything. That would connect the human brain and body to the system, to the Internet, to the AI quantum-controlled Internet, I should say. Oh, he also talks about people who have been getting the juice. You know what I mean by the juice. I can't speak so freely here, but there is a connection to them and Bluetooth picking up unique MAC addresses to them suddenly that shouldn't be. You know, like there's a suggestion there that people are being implanted with their own identifiable MAC addresses. And that's a big part of what we've seen in the past few years. So he goes on to talk a lot about how events in the last 2 years have helped them move this agenda towards complete assimilation of the mind into the matrix, and how controlling it is. He says you can lose your job and career for the mildest deviations from Big Brother normality and be cast out. And that is very true. There's a lot of things that he says in the book, very well spoken, very well said. Just from a truther standpoint, I think he does a lot of Christians, truthers, would agree with a lot of his statements. In fact, in many ways, there's many things that he's saying that are side by side in parallel to what Christians are saying as well. But David's not a Christian. He's just a truther who sees the solution to everything being somewhat different than a solution than asking for help from Jesus and being saved by Jesus. He doesn't see it that way. And I'll break down in a moment what his suggested solution is. And here's one of the things that he kind of proposes as a solution. He says, they cannot take away our self-respect if we do not give it to them. Here lies the key to freedom. Self-respect will never bow to tyranny. Every tyranny in all history is the result of self-respect being conceded by the masses, and every tyranny has been overthrown by those who refuse to give it away. That's a big component to his recommended solution, is that we maintain our self-respect, that we not give it away to the tyrants. I can attest to a similar experience in my work, my day-to-day work. I can see in this huge corporation, this international, gigantic corporation, that the way they function on a day-to-day basis, very compartmentalized, with power being concentrated at the very top, keeping people below in the dark on things, But underlying all of that is this idea that you really have to kiss up and agree with your immediate supervisor in every way. You cannot, speak to them with like your own source of self-respect as an individual, because they interpret self-confidence and speaking to someone as an equal, they interpret that as disrespectful. You need to be a bootlicker. You need to be so appreciative and happy for your existence in the company and the organization, and grovel before the bright ideas of your superiors, in quotes. They have to be constantly reassured of their greatness by their underlings. And that, sadly, I don't think all leaders are that way, but in this company, everything I'm seeing is retaliation against those who don't fall in line with that type of thinking. And absolutely don't think about having a life outside of work. You are there 100% to serve the system, and you should be on call and available, answering questions 24/7. So the other thing, besides standing up for yourself as an independent, individual who's not lesser than what we call the elites, in quote, but actually seeing ourselves as better than the elites, because we are actually real people rather than stuck in that low vibration. But the other thing is just recognizing that this world, this reality is fake. That's a big part of it. It's just in your everyday life, seeing how fake it is helps you break free from its fakeness. He says, we become unaware of the infinite field of prime reality that lies beyond. Answers to the challenges in the world of the seen will not be found in the world of the seen. That is only a simulated projection akin to a movie screen. The answer lies in the expanded realms of consciousness that we cannot see and choose not to sense. This does not have to be. Infinity is awaiting us the moment we choose to free ourselves from the prison cell of five senses. The brain is not consciousness. So that, we are consciousness beyond the physical brain that we see represented in this physical reality. So basically, be aware that it's all fake and hold on to your own dignity and self-respect in this system. Don't give it up. The other thing he's mentioned too is a distrust of the light. People, near-death experiences. He has studied many of them, and he has a skepticism of the light, being that he thinks it's a way of getting recycled back into the system. That's a harsh one for me to hear, because I have studied so many near-death experiences and had experiences with family members and myself, and I'll have to talk a little bit more about that one, I suppose. I kind of disagree with David on that, because I find that the amount of love, the experience of the love that one goes through in that experience, the intense knowing, and for it to be a fake, for it to be part of the enemy's plan, it just seems like the enemy would have to be in touch with that level of love, and I just don't see that they would be able to even get close to replicating that. But that does seem to be a big part of the Gnostic belief system, that we are trapped into this system through five senses only, and we get re-trapped into it through a reincarnation cycle. I just find that the love connection that we so often feel at the time of an NDE would be difficult, I think, to be faked by an entity that is malevolent and evil at its core. But David talks about the fall of man, like the biblical fall of man, being where we were fully ourselves in a prime reality, a higher reality above from this. We got pulled into this fake reality, and now that was the fall. The fall was being suckered into this fake reality, which has caused a separation of ourselves and what he would call source, infinite knowledge, infinite freedom, oneness, limitless power, that we've been separated and closed off, and that is the fall. So if you hear him talk, you'll hear often about how the solution is to reconnect with the higher self, the source, the infinite power and oneness and knowing, as opposed to a Christian outlook, which is to connect with that infinite power of God through Jesus. That's really the biggest difference there. Everything else is got a lot of similarities. There is a belief, and there's some evidence too. I think there's some valid argument that the system, when you look at the media and the governments and the control system that exist, that they do seem to be overly interested in keeping us in fear and believing things in a certain way. And if you look at the satanic rituals involved and the customs, it does seem like they're harvesting energy to help manifest something into reality. So do we have some, I mean, that begs the question, do we have some ability to bring forth in this reality just by focusing our attention on it? Does the attention of real beings, real conscious beings on a certain area and a belief that it is so, does that help bring it into this reality? Because it does seem at a certain level we are being conditioned to believe certain narratives in order to bring about a chain of events and an ultimate goal of control. I don't know. I've heard some interesting comments about this this process of control and the near-death experiences. I brought up that in a recent video, that one Mandela Effect near-death experience. Brandon left me a quote saying that he had an NDE. He said, but his mouth was held shut where he could not scream for Jesus, and he was in hell. Hell's suffering is incomprehensible to the human mind. The heat is like an after-dinner mint compared to the mental anguish. I gnashed my teeth until they were like I was chewing ice or raw candy against my jawbones. It changed my life. It was a lot more to it. Some I've never told anyone. When I was at judgment, it was like everyone was there at every time. Everything I ever did was on the jumbo screen, not only what I did, but how I felt when I did it. Like if I told someone I loved them, my true feelings at the time I said it could be seen, just like me saying it was on a display, like I read out computer analogy readout. So it sounds like a pretty nightmarish NDE experience. Let me get into comments now since I'm here. Another comment, Great Slave Lake, the deepest lake in North America. New to me, never heard of it. So something to look at. One said, congratulations on breaking free from a job you can't stand. Much love and prayers. Stay safe. Well, I haven't broken free entirely. I thought I was going to be broken free last week, but I'm still somehow a part of this system. Another comment says, I found out about the Mandela Effect because of my own quantum immortality experiences years ago. We keep jumping and getting looped. Dolly Head Braces says, I remember my experience with the light that emanates love, and that is very accurate. It's like the feeling you get when someone you love and they love you very much, only 1,000 times in the most pure radiating way. It has to be God. I've been reading more and more about the Holy Spirit lately, and in his own way, God is directing that as well. My pastor had a sermon recently, which I made a video about, and just yesterday my wife had me drop some stuff off at the thrift store where I had a book sale for 25 cents. I find Francis Chan's Forgotten God sitting on the shelf, calling to me, praying for more revelation. So looking at some synchronicities there in his life. I agree with, it's just hard for me to believe that that level of love could be faked by malevolent beings who seem to be the opposite of love in every way possible. So for me, the near-death experience with the love that is experienced in that process doesn't seem like it would be a possible deception, but that's just my take on it. Here's one that says, I do not remember dying, but I have had similar experiences where my world changed, such as having an aunt, uncle, and cousins I have never met appearing out of the blue. My experience of life is so bizarre I stopped even trying to discuss it with anyone when I was very young. Another one said, this chick I know from the streets told me they gave her fentanyl for her pain after giving birth at a hospital. They pulled out of Afghanistan, and now fentanyl is all over the streets, and hospitals are prescribing it. What big old question mark. It's so unbelievable. I'm not sure she told me the truth. Well, I can tell you, I just had an incident at the hospital, and sure enough, they gave me fentanyl for the pain. Interesting world we live in. One person said, so you're basically doing nothing all day long. I'm talking about the Zoom meetings. Congratulations, you've been accepted by the system. I know it. And, you know, my new hero is this teacher in Canada. You're going to have to Google it because he's kind of making fun of the system, the whole woke system. And he's got these prosthetic breasts that he's wearing that are super exaggerated. Just Google it. I mean, it's hysterical. And they can't fire him because, you know, they're all so woke, and he can identify as whatever he wants. Man, I wonder if I were to get an outfit like that and go to work, what they would say. I mean, it's gotten to be that level of ludicrous. The adversarial relationship that's going on. I have reported 2 supervisors to an ethics board. It's getting investigated at the very top. They absolutely hate me right now, and I just keep waiting for the hammer to fall. But I have done as much as I can to really provoke them, I'm afraid, in this matter, just because, you know, I just got to be me. And I reported them on numerous issues, and now we will see what happens next. But I have not gotten the prosthetics to make fun of the woke culture. That would be hysterical, though. Residue Junkie says, of course all major companies are on board with the New World Order agenda. They're owned by the Rothschilds. That is who Prince Charles, well, was Prince at the time, was talking about, who has limitless trillions of dollars, actually more than that, total wealth of the planet. Yep, total. It's obvious for the past 100 years they are moving the world power center east. We are already in a synthetic world run by ancient artificial intelligence. Adam had dominion over all the world, but man is in a different world where he must till the soil and has nowhere to lay his head. So that's a point of Gnosticism. This person says, perhaps you're onto something here. I've had the Mandela Effect since age 5, and that happens to be when my parents told me about the NWO and the Mark of the Beast, how taxes were not legal, and the Vickies in the future. It is interesting that people from the 70s were coming up with what the future would be, and how few people believed it. So those were all some very interesting comments. Just wanted to give you some views that I found to be true of David Icke. I'm not saying I subscribe to his views, but some of the things he says does ring similar to things that I've observed, and some things do not. But there's some other books that I'd like to go over too. Maybe I can do a book review on some others in the future. I should mention too, Dr. Michael Newton is referred to in David's book. He talks about his books, Journey of Souls, Destiny of Souls. And David doesn't believe in that any of that is true. He believes it's all of the idea that we die, go into the light, go to some sort of in-between place and then come back and are reborn. He thinks that that's all a deception to keep us back in this this simulated world. Synchronistically, Michael Newton died on September 22nd, 2016, and I don't know how many times I've talked about September 23rd being the 2016 being the big day, big event for me. I'm familiar with his books. I've read them a long time ago. And the thing that I found, the only thing that I found questionable with Dr. Newton's works is that all of the corruption in the world and all of the bad things, he doesn't seem to acknowledge the truther type total control grid. Nor does he see satanic agendas that they exist at all. Pretty much in denial of all of those things. So that raises a question for me, because I've seen evidence over and over that these things exist. David Icke also, interestingly, does not trust channelers, at least not anymore, because in his life he had mediums twice tell him very specific things about a very specific incidents. These people didn't know each other at all, and there's no way they could have known any of this. So he knows it was from a spirit on the other side communicating through these people, but his investigations revealed that they were lying. So his belief system is that these people who were channelers were being deceived by demons or archons or reptilians, whatever spirit is in that lower fourth dimension. They had intercepted the medium's connection and was feeding them these lies, and just for whatever. So his skepticism of the channeling is pretty, I thought that was interesting, because so many have relayed their, in quotes, what they believe to be truth based on channeling, whether they're channeling extraterrestrials or spirits or whatever name you want to go by. David Icke actually doesn't trust them. That's a very Christian viewpoint too. Christians do not trust mediums and channelers because they could be just a deception. And how does the channeler know that they're not being lied to? And the one thing that I still go back to is so many of these channelers, or even David says his truth he found by connecting to his higher self or greater source. He has this experience on a hill in Peru, and that's what he taps into to find truth, and then he gets led to connecting dots of evidence, and he researches very diligently, but nothing about the Mandela Effect. So many of the folks out there who are giving the information, and I do like David in a sense that he's a little more humble than a lot of other people. He'll admit that he doesn't know something when he doesn't know it. But interestingly, he does not even bring up the Mandela Effect, just stays away from it. He certainly is aware of it, but he's not making a definitive stance on it right now. So maybe he's still investigating it, and he doesn't want to talk about it until he knows. But there's a lot of people who claim to have connections to a higher source or to their channeling or whatever mystic force that they have to get truth, but they know nothing about the Mandela Effect, and they don't know whether or not it's real. And I would just take that, when you're listening to people who are telling you how the world operates and how everything exists beyond the veil, consider the fact that they don't know everything, because they still don't know anything about the Mandela Effect. And I'm not saying that I know everything just because I do know about the Mandela Effect, but I do find it interesting that people who claim to be in connection to this higher truth, that they've broke beyond this lower level of existence, but they still don't have any definitive understanding of what the Mandela Effect is about. And there's a lot of things about the Mandela Effect that I still don't fully grasp. I don't grasp it, but I know that it's real, and I know that I've experienced it fully. That doesn't make me, any more knowledgeable than anyone else. I think David is a great researcher, and I appreciate his research. But a lot of researchers will not I'm just making the point here. A lot of researchers are afraid to even touch the Mandela effect, which that's amazing to me. This is such of a hotbed of an issue. It's like they don't even know what to do with it. You know, do we go with it or against it, or just not talk about it? That's where we are in this world. Well, I've spoken enough. I'll keep you posted on to the as to all the drama with work, and do another book report maybe soon too on something else I've read. And so God bless. Have a good week, and we'll talk to you later.